I was left out of the family will for no reason. When I investigated why, I uncovered a secret affair that shook everything. The funeral parlor smelled of lilies and regret. I sat in the back row, watching my father's mahogany casket being lowered into the ground, wondering when everything had gone so terribly wrong between us. 3 days later, sitting in the sterile conference room of Hartwell and Associates, I would learn that our fractured relationship had deeper roots than I'd ever imagined. "I'm sorry, Sarah," Mr. Hartwell said, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses as he closed the will. "Your father left everything to your brother Michael and your cousin Jennifer. There's no provision for you." The words hit me like a physical blow. 43 years of being Daddy's little girl, erased with a few legal sentences. Michael shifted uncomfortably in his chair, avoiding my eyes, while Jennifer stared at her hands, her usual confidence nowhere to be found. "There must be a mistake," I whispered. "We had our differences, but he wouldn't?" "I drafted this will myself 6 months ago," Mr. Hartwell interrupted gently. "Your father was very specific about his wishes. 6 months ago. That was around the time Dad had stopped returning my calls, when our Sunday dinners became stilted conversations that ended with him finding excuses to cut them short. I'd attributed it to his declining health and grief over Mom's death 2 years prior. But this felt deliberate, calculated. That night, I sat in my apartment surrounded by photo albums, searching for clues. There was Dad teaching me to ride a bike, Dad walking me down the aisle at my wedding, Dad holding my newborn daughter Emma with tears in his eyes. What had changed? What had I done to deserve this betrayal? The next morning, I called Dad's longtime housekeeper, Mrs. Chen. She'd been with the family for 20 years and knew our secrets better than we did. "Oh, Sarah," she sighed when I told her about the will. "Your father, he was so troubled these last months, always looking through old papers, muttering about the past." "What kind of papers?" "Photo albums, letters. He spent hours in the attic. I found him crying up there once, holding some old photographs." The attic. I'd forgotten about Dad's makeshift office up there, where he kept his important documents and memories. If answers existed, they'd be there. Michael reluctantly gave me the key to Dad's house. "I don't understand this either, Sarah," he said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "Maybe you'll find something that explains it." The attic was exactly as Mrs. Chen described. Papers scattered everywhere, photo albums open, a lifetime of memories laid bare. I started with the photos Dad had been examining. Most were family pictures I recognized, but tucked between pages of a leather album, I found something that made my blood run cold. It was a birth certificate. My birth certificate. But the father's name wasn't Robert Lawson. It was James Morrison, my mother's college sweetheart, the man she'd dated before meeting Dad, the man who'd been Dad's business partner for 30 years, the man who'd been at every family gathering, every holiday, every important moment of my life. My hands trembled as I searched through more documents. Hospital records from when I was born showed Mom had been admitted 3 weeks earlier than the date I'd always celebrated as my birthday. A letter in Mom's handwriting, never sent, addressed to James. "She has your eyes, your smile. Robert loves her as his own, but the guilt is eating me alive." The room spun around me. Everything I thought I knew about my identity crumbled in an instant. I wasn't Robert Lawson's daughter. I was the product of an affair that had somehow remained hidden for 43 years. But there was more. A bank statement showed regular payments to James Morrison's account, payments that had stopped 6 months ago, monthly amounts that could have been hush money or child support. The timing aligned perfectly with when Dad had changed his will. I found James's address in Dad's Rolodex and drove to his house with my heart pounding. When he opened the door, I saw immediately what Mom's letter had meant. I had his eyes, his stubborn chin, his way of tilting his head when confused. "Sarah?" His face went pale. "What are you doing here?" "I think you know." He stepped aside, and I entered his modest living room. On the mantelpiece were photos of me throughout the years. Graduation, wedding, Emma's birth. Pictures that could have been taken by a proud father watching from the sidelines. "He told you," James said quietly. "He left me out of his will. I found Mom's letter." James sat heavily in his armchair, suddenly looking every one of his 74 years. "I begged him not to punish you for our mistakes. You had nothing to do with what happened between your mother and me." Tell me everything. The story that emerged was complex and heartbreaking. My mother and James had reconnected at a college reunion while she was engaged to Dad. One night of weakness, one mistake that created me. Mom was too afraid to tell Dad the truth, and James agreed to stay silent to protect everyone involved. Dad raised me as his own daughter, never knowing I wasn't his biological child. Then how did he find out? James's eyes filled with tears. Your daughter Emma needed that blood test for her school physical last month. The results showed she had a rare blood type that was impossible given you and David's blood types. The doctor suggested paternity testing to resolve the discrepancy. When you mentioned it to your father, he started putting pieces together. The innocent blood test that had revealed Emma's unique genetic marker had unraveled a 43-year-old secret. Dad had quietly ordered his own paternity test, and the results had shattered his world. He came to see me after he got the results, James continued. He was devastated, said he felt like his entire life had been a lie. He'd loved you so much, Sarah, but knowing you weren't his biological daughter made him question everything. He didn't know how to face you. So he cut me out instead. He was planning to change the will back. Mrs. Chen called me after the funeral. She found the rough draft on his desk. He'd written you back in with a letter explaining everything. He just needed time to figure out how to tell you the truth. I sat in stunned silence, processing the revelation that Dad had died before he could make things right. The man who'd taught me to drive, walked me down the aisle, and loved me unconditionally for over 4 decades had died thinking I'd prefer his money to his love. There's something else, James said, reaching into a drawer. He pulled out a sealed envelope with my name on it. He asked me to give this to you if anything happened to him. Inside was a letter in Dad's careful handwriting. My dearest Sarah, if you're reading this, it means I failed to find the courage to tell you the truth while I was alive. Learning about your parentage broke something in me, not because I love you any less, but because I realized how much of our relationship was built on a lie I never knew existed. You are my daughter in every way that matters. I changed diapers, scared away boys, taught you to drive stick shift, and walked you down that aisle with more pride than any father has a right to feel. But I also understand if you feel differently now that you know the truth. I've left everything to Michael and Jennifer, not to punish you, but because I wanted you to have something more valuable than money, the truth about where you come from. James Morrison is a good man who has loved you from afar your entire life. Perhaps you can find a relationship with him that I was too proud and hurt to facilitate. I'm sorry for handling this so poorly. I'm sorry for pulling away when you needed me most, but I'm not sorry for being your father for 43 wonderful years. All my love, Dad. And I'll always be your dad. Through my tears, I looked up at James. What happens now? That's up to you, Sarah. I don't expect anything. I gave up that right 43 years ago. But if you'd like to know more about your biological heritage, about your mother's family, I'd be honored to share what I know. Over the following weeks, I learned about my grandmother's artistic talents, my great-uncle's war stories, and the genetic predisposition to mathematics that explained Emma's exceptional abilities in school. James shared memories of my mother from their college days, her love of poetry, her terrible cooking, her infectious laugh that I'd inherited. Michael eventually came forward with the truth about Dad's final weeks. He'd known about the planned will change and the letter Dad had written to me. He was going to tell you everything on your birthday next month, Michael said. He'd even bought you a locket with both his and James's pictures inside. I found the locket in Dad's dresser, along with another letter detailing his plan to bring James into our family officially, to acknowledge the man who'd silently supported and loved me from the shadows for over 4 decades. The inheritance dispute resolved itself when Michael and Jennifer insisted on splitting everything 3 ways. Dad would have wanted it that way, Jennifer said. The money was never the point. 6 months later, I stood in the same cemetery where we'd buried Dad, this time holding Emma's hand as James placed flowers on my mother's grave. Emma had adapted to having an additional grandfather with the resilience of childhood, delighted to have more family members to spoil her. Do you think Grandpa Bob is angry that we're here with Grandpa James? She asked. I knelt beside her, thinking of the man who'd loved me enough to claim me as his own, and the man who'd loved me enough to let him. I think he's happy that we're all together now. The will had left me out, but the investigation had brought me into a fuller understanding of love, sacrifice, and the complex ways families are formed. Money could never have given me what I'd found in that attic, the truth about my origins, and the knowledge that I was deeply loved by not just one father, but two. Sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't what's left to you, but what you discover was there all along.